Hi there everyone and welcome to Tech Cravers. So this is definitely a product I never anticipated reviewing on my channel. It's the RGB20SX from Powkiddy. And as some of you might recall, I basically hated its predecessor, the Powkiddy RGB30. I had so many issues with the battery on that one that I eventually gave up completely, and it's been packed away ever since. I even made a video on why I wouldn't buy that handheld, and let's just say that many of you experienced the same issues. However, my friends over at LitNXT reached out and said, hey, why don't you at least test the RGB20SX? They have fixed the charging issues and it's actually quite a nice handheld. And one thing you can say about me is that I don't hold grudges for long, so I agreed to receive it and give it a try. And now that it's here, let's forget the past and see if this one is any better. Let's jump into it. As you can see, Powkiddy has taken a slightly different approach with their packaging compared to what they usually do, and definitely a different approach compared to Anbernic. The Powkiddy RGB20SX comes in this yellow-brown box, but it has a bit more artwork than before, not so much around the sides though, apart from which color we have inside and some information about the manufacturer. Inside we get the handheld itself, a charging cable, which I will test very soon to see if this handheld is actually chargeable now, and some stickers to put on the front to make it look like some sort of animal with horns, or perhaps this bear cat thingy. And we also get the world's shortest quick start guide. But let's take a closer look at the actual handheld. And my first impression is that it feels quite solid. I haven't booted it up yet, but the 4-inch 720p screen looks absolutely massive on this device. I also think that Powkiddy has nailed it with the transparent black case. The only thing I can nitpick on is that the front-facing speaker is a bit too visible through the grid on the front. But now let's do this. If I can make my handheld cuter, then you can be sure that I will. The horde animal was a bit too weird though, so I will go with this bear. Now that we have cutified our handheld, it's time to go through its specifications. This is the exact same handheld as the RGB30, but in a different form factor, so if you know how that performs, you will know how this one performs. Anyway, the RGB20SX features an Rockchip RK3566 quad-core clocked at 1.8 GHz, and it's supported by a Mali G52 GPU. It has 1GB of LPDDR4 RAM and dual microSD card slots, one for the OS and one for your games. The handheld I got here came with a 128GB card with games, but as always I recommend that you supply your own game dumps. The 4-inch IPS screen is the star of the show, boasting a resolution of 720p. That means that the device delivers clear and vibrant visuals. It has a big 5000 mAh battery as well, which is nice since the screen might need some extra juice. Before we proceed, I'll conduct some charging tests. Firstly, I'll use the built-in cable from my JSAW power bank to assess the charging performance. And it doesn't seem to work straight out of the box. The built-in cable from my JSAW power bank didn't seem to work, so now I'm testing with a regular wall adapter instead. This adapter is what I typically use when I charge all my devices while filming next to my computer. However, the RGB20SX doesn't seem to like that either. And for the last test, I'm using the cable that came with the device. It's connected to the same JSAW power bank that I was using just a moment ago. And finally, it seems to connect. While it's not ideal that it only works with the cable it came with, at least it's better than the RGB30, which needs a guide on how to charge it. The operating system that ships with this device appears to vary depending on where you buy it. Some YouTubers have received this handheld with GelOS installed, but mine came with UnofficialOS, which is a fork from GelOS. I don't really mind though, since they are both very similar. The first time you start it up, you really see how great that square 720p screen delivers vibrant colors. And I can now absolutely understand why this has become a favorite among reviewers out there. However, one quickly needs to go in and turn off the background music and button sounds in the settings to avoid having a seizure. Now let's compare the RGB20SX to some other consoles, starting with, you guessed it, the RGB30, which I've actually managed to charge for this footage. This comparison is mostly to emphasize that the screen is actually the exact same one. Even though the vertical form factor on the 20SX makes it look longer, it's some sort of optical illusion. And now I'm just gonna compare it to those vertical handhelds I could find that I feel are comparable in some way to the RGB20SX, starting with the Anbernic RG353V, which is probably the best example as it houses the exact same chip inside. Next to the RGB20SX, it looks quite tiny though, don't you agree? Next up is another Anbernic handheld, the RG405V, and this one has better specs on the inside than the RGB20SX, but it's also much chunkier. That also means that the buttons are a bit better ergonomic wise as well, at least for my hands. Now, onto a funny handheld that I reviewed a while ago, the M18 Retro Portable, with its widescreen display and very broad form factor. By the way, I recommend that you go watch my review of this handheld as well when you have time, as it's quite unique compared to many other handhelds out there. Not least with its physical sliding power button, which I haven't seen in many other handhelds. And for the last size comparison, let's look at the RG35XX Plus, which is another very popular vertical handheld from Anbernic. This one is quite a lot smaller and it has no analog sticks, but you won't be playing any games that need sticks on this one anyway. Emulation-wise, this is one of those quite weird handhelds that offers analog sticks without really being able to play systems that require them. Harder to run N64 games would almost not run at all, with choppy sounds and commonly FPS drops. I know that the RK3566 can be tweaked to run N64 pretty well if you want to, and it's easy to go inside the menu and swap emulators and everything, but out of the box N64 was quite a disappointment for me. PSP is basically the same, it's playable but has choppy sounds and FPS drops here and there. On the other hand, older systems like Game Boy Color looked absolutely superb on the RGB20SX screen, and I can see myself spending many hours in Pokemon Pinball on this handheld in the future. PlayStation games also looked amazing, and I appreciate that Powkiddy has configured the emulators to have bezels around the screen when they're not optimized for the 1:1 aspect ratio that comes with the RGB20SX. Old vertical shooters are also really great on this screen, and the 720p resolution really helps those tiny pixel details to pop. All in all, I would like to say that Powkiddy has redeemed many of my negative experiences with their previous handhelds, and the RGB20SX is actually a good handheld, if one can overlook some of the peculiar charging issues still present, especially when considering the price point. Because this is another sub-$100 handheld, or specifically it will set you back $90, not including shipping, but if you order from today's sponsor, LitNXT, you get another 10% off using the code LNT10 at checkout. I will of course link to that in the description as well. And apart from choosing whether you want SD cards with pre-installed games or not, you can also select from a few different colors. And that's it for my take on the Powkiddy RGB20SX. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you might consider leaving a thumbs up if you did. Also comment down below what you think of Powkiddy's handhelds. Have you experienced any of the issues I mentioned in this video, or has everything worked out smoothly for you? Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for more content like this in the future. Thanks for watching, Tech Cravers out!